Good afternoon and welcome to COVID and the Law with me, Samson Ladi Anyanini. Now, COVID-19's impact has been devastating on people, business, and the economy of the world, with 2.2 billion jobs. That is 68% of the global workforce under threat. Employers Association report at a Joy Business Forum held this week that some 6,500 workers have lost their jobs in the hospitality industry. The Employment Ministry revealed that 160 companies in the formal sector reported to the Labour Office they were laying off over 7,000 workers. Of course, we know that this might be just a tip of the iceberg. What can you do when you are laid off, and how can employers assist you go through this painful exercise of not having a job to put food on the table? The labor issues arising from the impact of COVID-19. We'll be right back to deal with these issues. The National Labour Commission has revealed that 48% of its caseload in this pandemic constitute unfair termination. With this, managing job losses continue to be top on the agenda for the National Labour Commission. What are the plausible avenues for both employers and employees to resolve this problem? Let's listen to some stakeholders at the just ended Joy Business Jobs and Salary Financing Roundtable in our news round.
Have you lost your job due to the coronavirus pandemic? It may interest you to know that your dismissal could be unfair. This and many other job-related issues were discussed at the just-ended Jobs and Salaries Roundtable organized by Joy Business. Deputy Commissioner at the National Labour Commission, Rose Karikari Anand, explained that 48% of terminations are unfair, arguing that notice of termination must be a month or 3 weeks.
In the labour law, there's termination, and then there's unfair termination. Termination which is fair and the one which is not fair. The one which is not fair, in fact, if you look at the cases coming to the National Labour Commission, it constitutes about 48% of cases that we receive from complainants bordering on unfair termination. There should be grounds for termination. But there's this erroneous impression about the fact that you have the right to hire and fire, the common law, hire and fire. So how do you come to it the next morning and then your boss says that, gives you a letter that you are terminated? Which reason? No reason given. But notice is given. Notice, the law says minimum, depending on your contract. It could be 2 weeks, it could be 1 month minimum.
One major challenge befalling government when it comes to the exact number of job losses in both informal and formal sectors has been the absence of available data. Taking his turn on the Joy Business Jobs and Salaries Roundtable, Deputy Minister for Employment, Bright Rekubobe, assured that data covering job losses related to COVID-19 will be ready in the next 2 weeks.
One challenge we have as a country is data. We really are battling with data. We need to know the numbers. We need to know the numbers. As you had a paper I gave you, you only have about 7,000, which is woefully inadequate. And that's why I said we are doing a holistic one.
And that will be the formal sector.
Yes, and this is primarily the formal sector.
The roundtable saw discussants push for a possible review of some sections of the Labour Act, which does not serve their purpose in these COVID-19 times. Austin Garmer is a Labour consultant.
when we were writing the labor law, we got to a place where we have to separate the labor department from handling dispute resolution and deposited it in the National Labor Commission. The reason is simple, please. We're even going to have the labor department will have to experience a new shift. Even the name will have to change to possibly be called maybe Bureau of Labor Standards and Statistics.
Meanwhile, President of the Employers Association of Ghana, Alex Frimpong, has called on employers to be forthcoming with reports on layoffs.
We would want to make sure that employees are paid full pay, half pay, and also promise that when the situation gets better, they will be recalled. But for how long can employers continue to pay salaries when they do not have insight when businesses can rebound?
The Joy Business Jobs and Salaries Roundtable explored ways of working towards sustainable jobs during and after COVID-19.
You're welcome back. And my guest this afternoon is Mr. Joseph Aite. Mr. Joseph Aite is former chairman of the National Labor Commission. He's been in the practice for many years, and he has taught many people to get into the practice. And I am one of them. Good afternoon and welcome to Covered in the Law.
Thank you so much.
Right. So as you always know, Covered in the Law, this is your legal light and your help law in these trying times. At the appropriate time, we'll open the opportunity for you once again through Zoom, and then you will let us know your experiences and what you seek answers for in these difficult situations. So stay tuned in and let's have this together. So, you've been in the practice of the law and in labor-related matters for how many years now?
Well, for the law generally, it is 52 years, but for but specifically in the area of labor, it's been close to 30 years.
All right. So I asked that for a specific purpose.
Yes.
Do you remember any situation that the labor law has encountered that looks any close to COVID-19?
Good afternoon to your viewers in the first place, your listeners. I find it difficult to remember any such period in my practice or even my lifetime. I cannot remember any such situation. You know, COVID-19 has been the pandemic has been very novel. It's novel, and it is indeed causing a lot of havoc left and right. And one cannot say that it has been any easier for any side. It's been a very difficult time.
In fact, there are some who suggest that it may have come to, as it were, undo the law. So people are getting into circumstances where they understand that this is not the time to say, this is my right. Employer says, here are my rights. Employee says, here are my rights. That's where we are. Is that correct?
I should think so, that we indeed are in such a situation. But we are in the situation, as we can all see, that because of the novelty of the disease, one needs to have a very balanced view of the situation. You do not consider only the employer, you consider the employee. The two sides must consider each other, as you will appreciate, as anyone will appreciate. People are in business to make money, and people go to work also for their financial benefits they can have. It is indeed a very difficult way of balancing it, but you need somebody with a specialist knowledge, like a human resource manager, to manage the situation to satisfy the two sides.
So the law talks about the duties and obligations of both sides, the employer and the employee.
Yes.
If I must pay you, as the law requires me to do, I must first give you work to do.
Yes.
That's where we are now.
Yes.
If there's no work, you cannot be talking about your rights.
You want me to comment on that?
Yes.
No doubt, that is the situation. I premised my whole statement by saying that people invest for money. Anybody in business, he wants money.
Right.
And the person who goes to work also wants his financial benefits satisfied. Now, when we are in a situation where the investor is no more earning money because things have come to a standstill, it becomes difficult for him to dip into any excesses or any reserves to pay other people. And even if he must do it, it may be on humanitarian grounds for a very short time, because if he's not getting his resources replenished, he might not be able to go on any further.
As we speak, we are aware, for example, that the finance minister went to Parliament and gave us a certain global picture. And he said, quote, the impact of the pandemic has been devastating on the people, business, and economy of the world, with 2.2 billion jobs. That is 68% of the global workforce under threat. And I just referenced a Joy Business forum that was held in the course of the week on jobs and salaries. And the Employers Association also revealed that 6,500 people have lost their jobs in the hospitality industry alone. Then the Ministry of Employment also has, some figures it got from the Labor Office of 160 companies that had reported to it that it wanted to lay off 8 workers. And these are in excess of 7,000 workers. All of them seem to agree that this might be just a tip of the iceberg. At the time where the data is properly confirmed and collated, we might be seeing a completely different picture. If you take, for example, the private schools, we have as many as 33,000 of them in the country. And we know that they are one of the hardest hits. How should the employer and the employee be relating in these times? Reality.
It is an extremely difficult situation we are in, as we're saying. But in all circumstances, understanding JoJo would help a great deal. Now, if the employer is able to meet the employees and talk to them and indicate the difficulties that the employer is facing, and they also show what difficulties they have, the two sides might eventually arrive at a point where there'll be some understanding. If there's a union, it's easier in that sense, because the union leaders would be leading the discussion. But if it's an individual employer-employee situation, you have to deal with each person, and that's more difficult. And I'm saying that the best way out is communication. Communication is the way we resolve many issues in this world. If the employer sufficiently puts his cards forward and convinces the employee that, look, I'm ready to help, but there's nothing in my coffers to pay. For that reason, we may have to give ourselves, let's say, a period of time where you may go on leave or something without pay, and I stop the production whatever, until the situation improves. But we all know that in our current situation, we cannot say that tomorrow there'll be a change.
It's unpredictable.
Well, I said, when you look around the world, you can really see it's a little scary. It's frightening. You look at America, such a powerful country. Things are just going down, down, down. What do we do? I still would say communication would help. I do not want to get into my faith as the basis, the main basis, but communication will do. If I were to go for my faith, I would say, if you are a Christian, you pray without ceasing and find the solution from on high to it. But for us who remain here, communication must be the way.
It is certainly not easy to be talking to someone who is thinking, where will the next meal come from? Who is thinking, you're asking me to go home. You're speaking politely, nicely. But what does that change? I'm going home, I have kids, I have a family, I have dependents.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to talk to people like that, isn't it?
Extremely difficult. But let us remember also that in any country, particularly in Ghana, we have several people who are unemployed also. How do they manage? How do they manage? There was a time when somebody said you could be selling charcoal, you could be selling some other items in the market to earn a little in order to support yourself. I know it may sound a bit harsh for me to say that, but you see, you may say that, well, if the person is of a high caliber position and whatnot, how does he come down to do this, to do that? But we are in a situation where God is in charge. We must carry our problems to him. I've said I do not want to go into that area too much, but I'm convinced that that is a way out of the situation.
Of course, there are people of the faith who are listening and watching, who are watching us, so it is not bad to also pay attention to that as well.
Yeah.
So let's take a typical situation, and I want to start from that point. According to the statistics, about 33,000 private schools. We know that because schools were shut, and at a certain level, there is no school at all. Only some are trying through some means to provide some virtual learning. Some of the schools simply don't communicate to their employees at all. As far as they are concerned, everybody knows that there's no work. Everybody knows that government says schools have been shut. So I don't have any duty to come and tell you, don't come to work. You know you won't come to work. And I don't have any duty to come and tell you, you'll have something to benefit. How should they deal with such a situation?
Well, I think it is inhuman to leave the worker in the dark, because when you consider it, what they earn is very little. And when a situation like this has arisen, it is not comforting enough to tell them, I have no work, I have no this, so you go away. Talking to them goes a long way to make them feel that the situation has to be managed by the two. And you can seek the views of even the employee. How best can we go around the situation we are in? It's like a partnership of some sort, employment. And if the communication is good enough, as I keep on stressing, and if the understanding comes, they may begin to realize that it is not the employer's fault so much. And the employer too will appreciate that the employee is desperate because he's got to put food on the table.
That's right.
And he thinks this is the best place where he can get it. I know it's an extremely difficult situation, but I sometimes go to, again, faith. When you look at Deuteronomy 28, for instance, the first 14 verses, God is able to bless people, even in such situations, if they will rely on him. The woman of Zarephath in the Old Testament, the woman whose who was in debt and had to bring cans for oil to flow and those things. To some people, this may sound rather strange, but for people of faith who do not rely on themselves but on the Lord, according to Proverbs chapter 3, 5 and 6, trust the Lord in all your ways and do not just rely on yourself. In all your ways, acknowledge Him, and He will direct your paths. If you have that faith as a Christian, I believe in the circumstances, He will manage to find you what you must live on.
Okay. So the reason I asked that question was to come to this point.
Yeah.
33,000 institutions that may be in a situation of not providing for their workers.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine the numbers when it comes to the employees in these 33,000 institutions,
Yes.
private schools. From the information we are also getting about the over 7,000 who have been laid off, over the 6,500 in the hospitality industry, if an institution wants to lay off so many, how should they go about it according to the law?
Well, according to the law, you're in a situation where you will have to declare, what do you call it? Declare that because there is no job to be done, they've got to be laid off. And the law provides the grounds in Section 65 as to how you go around this. Notify them, meet them, talk to them, blah, blah, blah. But you see, as I keep on repeating, that you will go through all that, but it will depend on whether you have any reservoir of cash to give out.
As the employer?
As the employer.
Okay.
If you do not have that, it will come back to the issue of talking to them to appreciate that you are compelled to declare a redundancy. And declaring a redundancy means notifying them, negotiating, blah, blah, blah. But at a point, you don't have the means to pay what they want. And if you say you are shutting the place up, yes, you shut it down, and until the situation changes, you are not earning income. So you cannot give up.
I'm an employer.
Yes.
I want to lay off as many because of this situation. Step by step, what am I supposed to do?
Well,
I'm supposed to go to the labor office. What am I supposed to do there? What is expected? If there is a union, what is supposed to go on between us?
if there's a union, you have to notify them within 3 months when you contemplate the situation coming. But as we have said,
it's an emergency.
It's an emergency. It's an emergency. So even if you must inform them, notify them, you start talking to them. And start talking to them, you look at your coffers. What can I give them? And they will also, if there has been proper communication, appreciate that. Indeed, there's very little or nothing there. So what they can scoop out of the reserves, you may be able to give them to go away with. But it's an extremely difficult situation.
Right. Where does the institution that you served as chairman of come in this situation? Where does that institution, where does it come in?
Where the parties have tried to talk to each other for 7 days, we call it negotiation, and they cannot resolve it. It is for them now, or one of them, to report to the Labour Commission. The Labour Commission will listen to whatever complaint anyone has brought, see whether it can be resolved at the Research or Industrial Relations Department by one officer. More often than not, with such a situation, it cannot be. So they might ask the parties, would you like to go for a mediation? Mediation, if the parties agree, is going to cost them money. It's not for free. And they select their mediators, the two sides agree, and the mediator will start talking to them. if it is not working, they may decide that they want an arbitration. Voluntary arbitration might work. But again, if the facts are as they are, you might find that it is still not working, and it might be necessary then to say, well, we let the arbitrator give his award. And he will consider all these factors we are talking about before he says it should go this way or that way. Assuming the arbitrator says, okay, go and pay each person so much, and the business cannot pay, it means that they go away empty-handed, and the owner of the business virtually also goes away empty-handed. If he has assets to sell, he might say, let me sell the assets and pay everybody off and just go home and rest. Any amount that is remaining, I might invest it in, say, treasury bills and stay as it is. But you may find that it is even at a time when it's not easy to sell because people are hard up. And the situation, again, apart from the law, to my mind, calls for faith issues.
Right.
And with arbitration, whatever the finding, it is final.
Right.
It's got to be.
Okay, so before we get to the arbitration, which is like the sort of last point in the process when someone comes to you.
Yeah.
You spoke about first they bring their complaint, and it might be referred to, it will be referred to the industrial relations or research officers,
yes,
and they will deal with it. Give us, a graphic idea how supposing I brought a complaint, that I have not been giving notice and I've been terminated, and perhaps according to our collective agreement, I am entitled to 2 months salary for each year of the period that I have worked, and nothing of the sort has been done to me. There are other awards, that compensation that our agreement says I will be giving if I am, terminated nicely in the way because of this situation, and I'm not getting it. If I come to you, if I went to the Labour Commission, how will these officers go about solving the situation? And then if it doesn't work, then you go to mediation. Give us an idea how the mediation process too is done before we get to the arbitration, if it ever has to get there.
But when a person goes to the commission, he goes with a complaint, and he'll be asking for a relief on his form. Now, when it goes to the commission's duty is to find out whether the processes for settling any dispute, industrial dispute, have been exhausted at the level of the employer-employee state situation.
Right.
If it's found that they hadn't done so, they'll be asked to go back and try and resolve their problem by negotiation. The aim of the lawmaker was not to make it a long process, so only 7 days will be given the parties. If after the 7th day they cannot do it, they come to the commission, which will then have referred it to their industrial relations persons, who might try to persuade them that, look, these are the rules you yourself have made to bind your relations. You are going against ABC. You haven't given them notice, you haven't done this, you haven't done that. So please, would you like to go and comply? If it is simple, they understand it that way, that ends the situation. But more often than not, they will begin, the employer may begin to raise other issues, which makes it necessary to go to the next level. The next level may be the mediation situation, and if they meet at mediation, the mediator, who is a trained mediator with a certificate from the commission, will try separately to talk to each group or person. If he's able to persuade them to be together, fine. Then that resolves it.
That's the caucusing.
Yes.
Meeting each one of them and trying to get them to understand. Okay.
But when that fails, then now there will be the decision to go into either the arbitration if they so want it. And in some cases, they may say they don't want the arbitration because it's expensive. Each day that the arbitrator sits, he will charge $300 and all that. And because that is expensive, the parties may say, well, we want
so
the commission
the arbitrators
itself.
Are not members of the commission?
No.
Right.
No.
These are private persons.
Private persons.
Who have, expertise
Yes.
in how to resolve these issues.
That's right.
And you have sort of a portal for them. You have a register of them. So if people need them, you can ask them
to choose from the list.
Okay.
Where they are not able, or you think somebody is deliberately delaying, then you choose for them. You impose
the same way with the mediation.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Right. But what happens to the commission itself? Because there's a 7-member commission.
Yes.
You're supposed to have your sittings and resolve issues. So what happens? Because from the narration you have given so far, the commission
itself hasn't come in.
As in the 7-member which is supposed to sit and resolve issues has not come in.
Yeah. When the disputants say that they do not want the arbitration, for instance, they may say they want the commission itself to deal with the matter. In that case, a 7-member panel sits, but it must make sure there's a quorum of 5 with 1 from each of the stakeholders. Once that is done and the decision comes out, then it can be implemented. It may be implemented.
Okay.
But sometimes there may be an error of law or something. So then the window is open to the courts.
So it could be that the commission will sit and deal with the matter. We know this, what people find is a problem because the commission doesn't sit every day.
No. In the past, I don't know exactly now, it has been sitting once in a week. The reason is this, that every member of the commission is engaged elsewhere. It's a part-time position.
Okay.
And because of that, the meeting can only be that once in a week. Because people are engaged elsewhere, when you expect them to be available, maybe there's some other engagement.
So you're still here on Covered Under Law. This is your legal light and health law in these trying times. And our guest assisting us on the topic, labor issues amid the pandemic. Of course, you know, for a very long time now, we have spent quite a lot of time dealing with matters regarding work, labor issues. But as someone who was deep in there, and as you remember last week, we had another former head of the institution assisting us. Today we have Mr. Joseph Aite. And so, say I'm coming to the commission and I know that I want the commission to decide or to resolve my issue for me, and here is a commission that sits only once in a week. And in the covered situation, you have a lot of people coming. That certainly is not going to work.
It's extremely difficult. It's not only at that point, but even when you look at access to the building itself, the commission is on top the 5th floor.
All right.
When the youth...
So if you know the Ridge Hospital, the famous, now famous Ridge Hospital, just opposite it, that's right there.
The youthful group rather is on the ground floor, and it's not very easy going all the way up. But as you rightly point out, it can be very frustrating.
Because even in the absence of COVID, you go there on the days that you sit, and the place is choked.
It's choked. There's not even space for people to sit. They are in the corridors and whatnot. So what can be done? You know, in the past, if I may digress a little, we were in asylum down in somebody's private premises, paying a lot of money for rent. And we really moved around very hard until Honorable Babin was then Minister for Works. We had to go to him, and he was kind enough to find us a place on top there. Various ministers had come and gone. As you know, the commission came under President Kufuor, served under Mills, came to Bahama, and all that time, until Babin found a place, it was just paying the rent to somebody, and some of us felt it was just not proper.
Right.
So we were trying to get an old bungalow to rehabilitate, but we were not fortunate. And we went there. So access is one problem.
Right.
And then you were saying they sit once in a week. That is so. I mean, with the quorum, you need 5 people to sit. 2 people, if they are away, you must make sure that at least each stakeholder has a representative on the panel. Otherwise, they cannot work. All that.
Give us an idea of the panel.
The panel comprises 5 persons. 1 from employers, employers, 1 from organized labor, another from the government group. Government has 2 members, employers 2, and organized labor 2.
All right.
Then there's a chairman who is appointed outside these groups.
Okay.
Of course, the workers group and the employers group must agree on who chairs it. That's how it works. Yeah.
Great. Again, question of how to deal with situations, particularly in COVID.
Correct, yeah.
In an institution that's already inundated. This institution was supposed to be everywhere in the country. As we know now, you'll have presence in only 3 of the cities. Yeah. And the most effective we know is here in Accra.
Yes.
That also doesn't help.
It doesn't help because, one, outside, I do not know right now how much they pay commissioners, but outside, when people are being suggested to go and serve on it, they look at the allowance of 200, 300 a month. They might as well forget it. It happened in Sekandi Takoradi at one time when workers had put in their nominee, employers had put in their nominee, and no government nominee was coming forward because, I mean, 200, who would take that to be certain day after day to adjudicate on these issues? So that is one area. I think there must be...
And what you just mentioned, you're talking about when? When was this?
Oh, I'm talking about 8 years ago.
8 years ago.
7, 8 years ago.
Right. Okay.
I don't know what
we can hope that
like.
now things would have improved.
Yes.
And we would, in due course, definitely have the current. He will be the second past or ex-head of the institution that we are dealing with. We would have the current officers or heads of the institution to be in the studio to also assist you. So we will continue, but we understand we have a question here from Musa Gondasang. He says, does the law work in Ghana? You can predict an outcome of a case in Ghana here because it's filed in a court. Before it's filed in a court. Ghana is now, okay, so I'm sure you've heard this question, but we're not talking about the court, we're talking about the Labour Commission here. He's asking, does the law work? I suppose he's asking, if I go to the Labour Commission, am I likely to get a decision in my favor if I'm an individual in a workplace and a giant of an institution? Yeah. Will the bias not be for the employer, or if it's a state institution?
Yeah. The law does work in Ghana insofar as the Labour Commission is concerned, as I know. Because of the composition, you have workers' representatives, 2 there,
right,
who are supposed to be protecting the interests of the worker.
Correct.
And then you have 2 also representing employers, who should also be protecting them. And you have the government having 2 who should also be thinking about the state's interests. But when they sit together, of course, they must forget about their various constituencies and work towards dispensing justice. The chairman is supposed to be a neutral person who tries to put them all together to arrive at a decision.
Right.
So I think the law works in Ghana in that regard. But I must confess, it may not be as fast as one would expect it to be.
Okay.
And sometimes that's the cause of the frustration.
So imagine I was coming to the Labour Commission to make a complaint. How much will it cost me?
It is all free. You don't pay anything. You pick the form free of charge. You go and fill it, deposit it, and then the commission will arrange to serve your complaint on the employer, and the employer will go through, bring his response, and then it will be served on you. But you see, unlike the court where you are sure of bailiffs and whatnot, here sometimes comes with, let's say, the complaint form not sufficiently indicating the address. So when even the employer brings the response, there's a problem until he comes to check. Then they will say, here is the response from your employer, and the 2 sides then begin to go on.
Okay, so,
that is one problem.
So the advice you're giving is that if you came to the Labour Commission, or if you went to the Labour Commission, you'll be given a form. That form is free of charge.
Yes.
And on that form, you are supposed to state what the problem is.
Yes.
And then state what you want, or you say you desire to be given to you, which is what he called the relief. And be sure to have your address, your contact address fully stated in there, because once you finish stating your complaint and what you need, they will send it to your employer. Your employer will also have to send his reply, sort of to come and justify, or to say, yes, you have complained that you were deserving of, an amount. You have not been giving the amount. The employer may admit and say, well, that's there, we'll give it to you. And they need to get back to you so that you come over and they can't locate you. So make sure your address is put in there nicely. So if I'm coming there, I don't need a lawyer?
You don't need a lawyer, no. You don't need a lawyer. You can come on your own, and then you can,
The possibility of facing a 7-member panel of people with expertise and an ordinary worker coming in to sit before you, and my employer coming there. My employer may come with a lawyer.
That is where you may have, you may feel a bit intimidated. But if you have a good case, remember, it's a 7-member panel. And as I said, 2 represent workers, 2 represent employers, and 2 represent government. With all these people, when they are sitting, they are supposed to ensure that there's justice. So if you do not come with a lawyer, it doesn't matter so much. The difficulty, however, will be that, let's say they need to take evidence, and they take in evidence, and there's a lawyer who raises objections to this and that, your documents and so on. You'll be in a lurch. So that's where you might need a lawyer. But we must remember that the commission was set up to deal with very simple cases and so on, to satisfy the ordinary workman. But in course of time, the difficulties have been such that more complicating issues are coming up. And when that happens, then the presence of a lawyer for you might be necessary.
That's
so
right.
that you feel sufficiently
But the assurance to you is that you don't need a lawyer to go to the Labour Commission and to have to assert your rights and ventilate your grievances and be attended to. And I can confess that when he was there, it hasn't really changed. I would go there with the client, and they would make the client feel so easy, and get the client to the point that the client could feel that I, the lawyer, could even walk out and the client would be attended to without the need for the lawyer, even though the employers often can afford to have a lawyer and the lawyer will be there to represent them. It is not intimidating. You get in they have chats that make you laugh, relax. All right. So you are still here on Covered and the Law. This is your legal light and health law in these trying times. We are looking at the labor issues in the midst of the pandemic, and we are making a focus on how you can take an issue up to the right quarters and get redress. So you got to a certain point when I said we may need to break down the various processes. And we got to the mediation, the arbitration, yes, and then we came to the commission itself sitting.
Yes.
But you had hinted that certain things might come up and they may require a court's intervention.
Yes.
When does it get there? Well, and why should I come to you and then later you have to take it to the court when I could have gone to the court straight?
Yeah. Situations where, I mean, with ordinary courts, even you will find that a high court may make a decision, and the commission itself is supposed to have that level of jurisdiction when dealing with disputes. Yeah. High court. Yes. And with high court,
the law says the commission has a status of a high court.
Yes.
Okay.
With the high court, when there's a difficulty, you appeal to the Court of Appeal, and so on. That window is open. In the same way, when the losing party feels that the law has not been put right and he needs to go and exploit that, he might then go to the courts to follow it. Originally, the laymen who were trying to put up this law, they were convinced that it was going to be an institution separate from the court, so that the courts wouldn't come in at all. But as you appreciate, I mean, the High Court has original jurisdiction in this country, and you cannot have a body that is an authority unto itself without any avenue to the superior courts for their intervention. So this was an illegality and was never accepted, even though the lay people felt it was disappointing to them.
There are situations where people have a complaint that they have come to you, you have asked their employer to do a number of things for them. Their employer is not respecting what you have done.
Yes.
Say you're supposed to pay them so much amount of money and give them X, benefit and so on. And the employer is either delaying in giving the person what they deserve, what you have asked them to give, or it's just not minding the person. What happens then?
If the employer is not minding the person, that person has an avenue to come back and tell the commission that the decision taken is not being followed, and where necessary, like you should go and do ABC for him and it's being done. The employer will be called again before the commission, and if he continues, he might be cited for contempt of court, which would then have to be put before the High Court or Court of Appeal to deal with that matter. So that gives him the assurance that there's that opportunity, if the employer is deliberately refusing to comply, to go through the system and come to the ordinary courts for his rights to be realized. Okay.
So I was referring to the issue about enforcement of your decisions.
Okay. Enforcement, the commission itself will not be able to enforce any such decision. The only decision it might be able to enforce is, as I said, it's been asked to go and, let's say, pay something, it's refusing to do it. The commission can cite the person or the company, the employer, for contempt, for refusing to go by its order. But apart from that, the commission itself, unlike a court, cannot have a system where it may say, let's go and sell his property or something. No.
Okay. Right. But the law gives you the power to go to the court to enforce your decision which an employer is refusing to comply with.
That's it.
So if you have asked an employer to pay, say, 2 months' salary for each year of work done by the employee, and it is for 10 years, then the employer is not respecting it, then you can go to court, as in the commission, and then ask the court to compel the employer to make that payment.
Yes.
Who do we have joining us by Zoom? Hi, Mugis.
Yeah, Samson. Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Mugis. Let's hear you.
Yeah, please, Samson, thank you very much for this opportunity. Please, in a situation where an employee in his work is not given the needed resource, or rather not protected enough to carry out his or her duties. And we all know in Ghana here, when you complain too much, your employer may tell you to go home or resign. In that case, do we have a sector in the commission that you can complain to and they will come to your assistance on, or how will they deal with this issue if you complain to them?
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Yes.
Yes, we have two bodies in this country, the factories offices, the factories inspectorate and the labor inspectorate. The two are supposed to be checking these things which go on. So if you go and complain to the commission, and the commission finds that you have a good case, they have called the employer and is not complying, it can ask the labor inspector, depending on the area, if it's an office or something, if it's a factory, the factory inspector to go and examine it to see whether you are being given, for instance, protective clothing and things like that. If those things are not being done, there's a punishment for them. And sometimes you may find that the labor inspection department or the factory inspectorate, they are not fully resourced to be able to move around and check these things for you. But that is their purpose. In any case, where you have a union, it's easier. The union complains and the pressure from the union is such that the employer will comply. Yes.
Yes. Okay, so who do we have next after Mugis? Hello, Nyomoda. Unmute your mic and let's hear you. Join with your mic sign, your PC
hello.
sound. Yes, go ahead.
Well, I don't think the Labour Commission really in Ghana works because I've got a personal, example of, a relative who had the case with Silver Star. They took it to Labour Commission, and the frustration is, you go and they tell you the files that you filed is lost because monies are changing hands, and this has been on for years. As an individual, there's no way you'll be able to win a case against your employers in Ghana because they've got a big pocket, and all those that sit on the panel are going to be compromised. Here's the case. Investigations and everything has been done, and they are supposed to be compensated. But, it's not happening because they go to the Labour Commission and they tell you, the files that you filed, has missed. And this has gone on for years. So I think things need to change. If you don't really have a big pocket, there's no way an individual will be able to win a case against
Let's clarify this. Can you hear me?
Can hear you.
Okay, so you filed the case at the Labour Commission when?
Well, it's not me. It's a relative, an uncle. And it's more than 10 years now. And this case is still ongoing.
Wait.
Because they were...
Hold on. So the person filed the case, and you say 10 years ago. And yes, and the person has been attending to the Labour Commission all these 10 years, And the excuse
yes,
is
they're
that
going on when it progressed to some stage when things needs to come to conclusion. You go one time, they tell you they cannot file the files.
okay. All right.
So and it has to start all over again. So
all right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. What can you say to him briefly, even though some of the claims he makes are difficult, because he suggests that the entire panel will be compromised and so on?
As for the panel being compromised, I'm afraid to say it is impossible. There are people who are chosen from various areas, and they are supposed to be seasoned men of integrity who are sitting there. And a workman's claim, how much is it to get him compromised? For the panel itself,
but the issue he talks about, files getting missing.
Files getting missing.
That's a reality sometimes, isn't it?
This is even in the courts, isn't it?
That's right.
It is so. So once it comes to the notice, effective ways will have to be devised to ensure that this doesn't happen.
But a case taking as much as 10 years.
I don't believe it.
At the Labour Commission?
I don't
you don't believe it?
No, I don't believe it.
Okay.
If indeed it has happened, your lawyer should be able to approach the executive secretary.
Okay, so that's why he's saying without a lawyer, that may be a difficulty. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you so very much, Mr. Joseph Aite. Is a former chairman of the National Labour Commission. I'm Samson Ladia Yanini, and this has been Covered in the Law, your legal light and health law in these trying times. We'll come your way again next week. Stay tuned in. Thank you.